Hi Aquarius, what's up? We're here with a timeless reading. Welcome. The first card that we have out is Eight of Swords. I'm seeing Page of Pentacles wanting to come out. What this can mean is that there's something that's like relatively new that you're doing, or something that you're doing where you feel like you don't have a whole lot of experience or know-how. So this can be you doing something where you don't feel like super comfortable, or it's not super familiar, and there can be some feelings that are coming up about that. But more and beyond just feelings coming up about this, it can be something where you feel a bit stuck. Like you could have a lot of thoughts and feel like you don't really know what way to move with this, or like the right way to do things, or like how to express yourself. That can be part of it. You know when you just have so much going on that you almost don't know what to do with it? Feels like that. Some of you don't know where to start. I'm getting that specifically. Yeah. Eight of Swords, King of Wands. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. King of Wands is the part of you that it's like you're required to initiate, to be assertive, to be self-confident, to do what needs to be done, to take charge, for you to be like sort of the boss of this thing that you have going on. But Eight of Swords, you can really be questioning that. You can be questioning yourself. You can feel like it's not just automatic how you make these moves either. You can feel more stuck in your head than anything. You can feel unsure too. That can be part of it. Seeing the Hierophant on the bottom of the deck. Why do you feel like this? Where is this coming from? You know what I get, like the feeling from this? Okay. It looks like there's self-judgment and criticism that can be involved in this, even if you're like, well, I'm worried about what those people over there are gonna think. I'm not judging myself. And it's like, that's just a reflection actually of you judging yourself. So there can be something like that that's going on that you're feeling a little bit insecure about actually. That's kind of the feeling that I get from this. Eight of Swords and King of Wands. So King of Wands would be you going and doing something, and King of Wands does stuff in a way that's more automatically, you sort of know what to do. You know, the ball is coming, and so you catch it, and it's just that sort of live action thing that needs to happen. But Eight of Swords can have you thinking about something so much and being like, I don't want to mess up, or I want to make sure that I do this the right way, or is this even the right way that I do it? It's like when the ball comes, it ends up like whacking you in the face and then falling on the ground when you were supposed to catch it, because you're like so busy being in your head, stuck in your head thinking about things. So you can even feel this going on and be like, how do I break out of it though? Like there can be even that level of self-awareness. Like I know what's happening, I just don't know how to sort of stop this from happening. I mean, we have the Ace of Swords here, so I think that's really important because it does show a breakthrough for you, but Seven of Swords is almost trying to get in the way of that. You see things clearly. See, this is you being in a place where there's the truth, there's a sense of understanding. This can even be a breakthrough that's happening. This card, when I see the card that's in this deck, it reminds me of the card that's, not the card, it reminds me of the building that's in a TV show. It's called, I think, Tell Me Lies or something like that, and the guy reads micro expressions and decides like whether or not people are being honest, essentially. This always reminds me of the building that they work within, at least earlier on. And so this feels like being in that place where you're like reading things correctly, where you know what the truth is, where you're not misinterpreting anything. And then having Seven of Swords coming and trying to sort of infiltrate that, because Seven of Swords is shadow, it's ignorance, it's stuff that's not really true. And I feel like you're standing here in the truth, knowing what's what, and the Seven of Swords is coming through trying to like persuade you out of being aligned with that. And this can be your own thoughts, and that's how it's happening. You know, King of Wands and Ace of Swords is, you know what you're doing. Just trust yourself and do what you need to do. And Seven of Swords can be all that stuff that you're dealing with mentally that's like, you don't know what you're doing. You're going to mess up, or like people are going to judge you. And like regardless of what's happening externally, I feel like this is you trying to work with a part of you that is the element of fear within you that you're working with, because that is where Seven of Swords spawns from. So it can be these thoughts that aren't true, that are coming through to sort of like break your spirit of the truth that you already know to be true, you know? King of Wands and Ace of Swords, I see this as you calling the shots. You know what you're doing. You can trust yourself. You don't need anybody else to be telling you what to do here. You got this. But having Eight of Swords and having Seven of Swords feels like this constantly questioning yourself, or feeling like, is this good enough? Or like, am I messing up right now? It just feels like this, like really getting in your own way here. Do we want to clarify anything else about this Seven of Swords, where this comes from? Clarifying it is the Seven of Swords. I think this is you just becoming aware of your shadow. It's like shadow work that you're doing. Because your shadow is coming through and being like, well, this is the truth. And it's like telling you lies, and it feels like knowing the difference. And what's persuading you here. You could have somebody around you that's confusing you as well. I'm seeing Queen of Wands, I'm seeing Knight of Swords, and I'm seeing Seven of Cups. If this is somebody outside of you, it can be somebody that's coming through and saying things to you that are sort of throwing you off a little bit, or you're questioning yourself, but this can also just be your own energy. King of Wands, Ace of Swords means that you're thinking clearly when you're in that place where you know it. So it's not like there's anything going on that you're not really aware of, which means too that you can realize the truth, and you can be moving around from a place where there's not anything that you're really missing, not anything that you're not really seeing. But if you're not believing yourself, that can be where there's a bit of an issue. Some of you, I do feel like there's somebody, okay, some of you, it's not about somebody that's around you. This is just all interplay within your own energy. But for others of you, you have somebody around you that I feel like is knocking your confidence a bit. And I feel too like what they're saying to you, to have Seven of Swords and to have Queen of Wands, this is and having it be like aimed towards you, I feel like you don't need to question yourself, and you don't need to like question what you're doing. Like you don't need to, well, I mean, saying you don't need to question yourself, you don't need to doubt yourself in this instance. I think it's great for us to question ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. In this instance, I'm not saying you need to doubt yourself. I'm saying you've like figured something out, like you know what you're doing. I think you can trust yourself to move through this based off of that. Having Seven of Swords and having Queen of Wands, you can have somebody that is like meant to actually be more of a counterpart and more of a support to you, and they can be doing something that's kind of messing with you a little bit here. But what this can mean too is that if this is just all your own energy, you can be messing with yourself and like messing with your confidence too, and telling yourself that you're not ready or you're not prepared to take this thing on, and that you don't know what you're doing. But this feels like, I don't see this being true. It feels like if you could get pulled out of your head and really zoom out and see what's going on, I think you would realize that this is all just stuff that's psychologically unfolding, rather than being like, well, because I'm thinking it, that must mean that it's the truth. And it feels like there's a needing to see through that. Because I do also feel like by you taking action, it's going to show you where you hadn't been showing up. I think it's going to show you where the part of you that is the Queen of Wands, which is the part of you where you're trusting yourself, you're confident with the moves that you're making, you're not shying away from expressing yourself. I think that by you moving through this, you're going to see where maybe you hadn't been doing that. Because I think this is, it can be this part of your energy. This doesn't feel right to me yet. I need to keep pulling cards. I do keep seeing the Two of Cups though, so definitely can be somebody around you that something can be stressing you out here. Eight of Swords and Knight of Swords. Knight of Swords is about when you take action, you can be saying something that needs to be said. This can just be you being swift, needing to do something. Communication can potentially be involved in it, or like spreading information, self-expression, communicating thoughts. Having Eight of Swords above that can be questioning and almost this thing that sort of stops you from moving forward. Interestingly enough, this Knight of Swords is moving backwards, and so it feels like, I wonder if there was some type of conversation that was had, or somebody made a move and did so without there being a lot of maybe thought behind it, and that could have brought things backwards a little bit. You know, it could have sort of set things up to be like this. What it looks like too is that Knight of Swords may break Eight of Swords out of their own head, which can even be you going ahead and gonna do something to sort of liberate yourself mentally. Maybe even just like, I need to just get this thing over with, or I need to just take action now and do something. And I can sit here and I can feel like this Eight of Swords. And maybe you just need to do something rather than sitting around and being like, I need to not be anxious, or I need to not be stuck, and then I'll be able to take action. You may just take action before that point of like, it doesn't need to be all perfect in your head. You may just, and you don't, maybe you're never going to feel ready, so are you going to like wait around and not do anything about this? Maybe this is about just working with what you have rather than it needing to be set up in a very particular way. It needs to look like this. It can be a time where, like, if Eight of Swords is what you're working with, that's what you're working with, and you're going to do it with that being what you're working with, rather than feeling like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, because it's not like this. And I think that this has to do with, like, mentally where you are with things, and needing to work with yourself in a condition that may not feel ideal, in a condition that may not feel perfect, and maybe you don't want to be having to work with this, but it's like, that's what you have to work with, and it feels like that's just how things need to be done. Because I'm not seeing you be incapable of anything here. I think that this is something that's going to reinforce itself, where it's like, you're gonna mess up, or you don't know what you're doing, or whatever this is that's going on, and then it like reinforces this thing within you to not do the thing, and then you're like, see, I'm incompetent, or look at me, I have no idea what I'm doing, or like, who do I think I am trying to play this role? And it feels like just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Taking action, ownership. You are being the King of Wands rather than somebody else. This means that nobody's coming around bossing you around, telling you what to do. King of Wands means that you're telling yourself what to do. And I think too, if there's like so much of a focus on needing to like go back and unravel something, it feels like it's just getting you deeper and deeper and maybe more and more stuck within a process. And this can be something that you're realizing, because now the way that I'm seeing this, I'm seeing things moving a little bit differently here. Now the way that I'm seeing this is that if we have Eight of Swords and we have King of Wands, it's that part of you where it's like, now it's time for you to get on stage or step up to the plate, and being so stuck in your head that you're not taking action, which King of Wands needs to physically be taking action. You need to do something. You need to express yourself. It needs to be worked out. Eight of Swords can be living completely in your head and then not taking any steps forward. Ace of Swords feels like you're being broken out of that. And I feel too, like in that moment when you're being broken out of that, Seven of Swords feels like you're seeing where you had been holding yourself back, or even like what lies you'd been believing, what you'd been telling yourself, what distortions you'd been connecting with, and feels like these things that had been stopping you from showing up, from trusting yourself, from expressing yourself, and ultimately from taking action. And being confident in the moves that you're making. But the thing is too that like you don't need to be confident in order to make moves. You can feel not confident and still make moves anyway. So I think this is also about learning about these conditions that you set yourself up for. Like, I have to be in this state of mind in order to do this. And sometimes, yes, we do. It's recommended that we be in a certain state of mind to maybe make certain decisions. But for this feels more so like you want something to be very, like this very pristine mental landscape, when I don't think that you're going to. This feels like one of those times when those conditions are something that you're going to have to develop over time. You have to like start where you are with this and work with that rather than shying away. Because this Seven of Swords and this Queen of Wands feels like there's somewhere where you're supposed to be showing up. And I think that you're getting in your own way here, trying to like walk yourself back down somewhere where you need to be moving forward. And I think too that with with action taking, that's how you're going to create the mental landscape in the way that you need it to be, rather than sitting out and being like, why do I not understand the way that the game is played? And it's like, because you benched yourself, but you're the one that's doing that. You don't have to be benched. And you're like, well, when I understand it enough, then I'll go in. And it's like, are you ever really going to feel like you understand it? Like, there's part of understanding. There's like this practical knowledge that we have, this like theoretical knowledge that we have, this understanding of things and how they work, but also not shying away from the value and not failing to see the value of moving through something and what you gain through pragmaticism, which is just you doing something in a hands-on type of way. Because as much as you can be an observer, that's still you being on the bench. And if you want to learn how to do something, like how do you strengthen your hand-eye coordination, you're going to actually have to go and do the thing. And it feels like I need to be perfect like before you go in, and it's like you go in and that's how you learn to be an expert at what you're doing, rather than this needs to be perfect and then I'll go in there. Like, how does that even make sense, you know? It's like I need to be the perfect driver before I can get behind the wheel, and it's like that's what we have practice for. That's exactly what this is setting you up for. And I think too, like you're working with the part of yourself that can convince yourself not to do things out of fear, but also convince you that it's not fear that's speaking in the first place. And this is you learning how to break through that to understand it. To like crack that egg open that I feel like you hadn't really been going into to try to understand. Because I think too, with 8 of Swords and 7 of Cups, this feels like your anxieties, your fears, your worries about things, this like self-judgment that you have about things, this kicking up a bunch of dust emotionally for you, and then feeling like you can't see even 5 feet in front of you. King of Wands, 10 of Wands feels like you're in a pretty stressful situation right now where you have to show up, and you can feel like it's really pushing you to your limit here. You can almost feel like you're kind of at capacity. I do want to clarify. Why is this so stressful? Is it just stressful because you have to like show up and be the King of Wands? I wonder. Like, this can be a part of your energy that you don't feel so comfortable stepping into, that it's like really required of you here. Like, you have to show up and learn how to do the dance with this. I think too, the emotional turmoil may be stressing you out more than what you actually have to do. I think this like repeatedly telling yourself you're not ready for something, it's not going to be okay, like it's not going to go well, you don't know what you're doing, like maybe somebody else can do it instead. I feel like that is making things actually more stressful. I think the emotional mental stuff that you're working through is what's making this stressful. I don't think the actual thing is stressful. There can be an element of stress to it, but I think it's more so the narrative around it. And like, how do you work with that then? How do you work with that within yourself? You're gonna be fine. I'm seeing that you're gonna figure it out. It is stressful, you're gonna figure it out all the same. Can feel like a lot is sort of coming at you here. Working the steps. Feels like this merry-go-round emotionally and in your head, like around and around and around, and it's like these same thoughts and then a next one and a next one, and it just is this cycle that you get into in your head, and trying to figure out how do you move around that so that it's not like taking you out completely and you can still get to where you're trying to go. This shows like where you're trying to go. It's not like nothing is coming at you while you're doing it. There is stuff coming at you, and you have to learn how to work with that in order to show up and do what you need to do here. King of Pentacles. King of Pentacles is the part of you that's going to figure it out. You're going to do what needs to be done. this is what you're signing on for. And I think too that you're seeing a part of yourself that may be scared. Ultimately, what is this about? To have Seven of Swords and to have King of Pentacles, this is the part of you that may be like, am I going to show up and what I'm doing isn't useful? What I'm doing isn't valuable? What's needed and what's required of me? I'm not really going to be able to do that. It's like all of this fear around failure and trying to, this is your shadow again. So it can be stuff that you're not like totally aware of at times. It can be you convincing you not to show up in the first place, again, out of fear, but being like, you're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready, or you don't know what you're doing. Again, this whole like, be an observer, be on the bench, and then maybe one day you'll know what you're doing enough to go in there. And it feels like you're being called to go in, like, we need you in there, go in there now. And this feels like Seven of Swords is your shadow coming through and being like, I'm giving you some really good advice here. It's not time for you to go in there. And the whole universe and your guides are sort of pushing you into this, telling you it's really time for you to do this. And it is. And I think that this is going to be a really big challenge, not only to your ego, but also to like your self-confidence and your self-expression. This is like the part of you that is the Queen of Wands, which is the part of you that's going to show up and you'll do your thing in your way, and it's going to be amazing. That part of you is being challenged right now. It's like that part of you that has to tap into your willingness to express yourself, to show up and not shy away from something just because it may be a bit of a challenge, and something that can really exhaust you because it comes back to your relationship with yourself. Your self-esteem is involved in this as well. And your self-confidence, your self-trust is involved in this as well. Your willingness to be vulnerable, because Queen of Wands is also about vulnerability. It's not you just showing up and pretending you're confident. It can be looking at everybody and saying, I feel really nervous right now, or even just like admitting that to yourself, but then still doing the thing. So it feels like this Queen of Wands is you still showing up regardless of what the like mental or emotional condition is. Not in a way where you're ignoring yourself and pushing yourself, but in a way where you're prioritizing what you want to be doing and working through fear that you're experiencing. The fear of failure, you know, of not being taken seriously, even with the King of Pentacles. All of those things that are surrounded around that would keep you from showing up and growing into the energy that you want to grow into. The confusing emotions that you're working with, the anxiety, the feeling of like not really trusting in yourself or feeling like you don't know what you're doing, the trying to learn how to do what you're doing. I think that there's a lot of, again, mental and emotional stuff that feels very stressful that you are working with. Simultaneously, I feel like there's a bit of a breakthrough that's happening now, and I think too that as you learn how to work within the energy and you don't give up and you do something that feels worthwhile to you, things are going to become so much more clear in a way that they don't feel like right now. Like stuff is going to start making a lot of sense to you if you are game for this, if you're willing to do this thing that feels like you have been called to show up here. There can be ambiguity that's throwing you off as well. There can be an element of the unknown and also like managing and working with yourself while you're going through a lot mentally and emotionally, because this is basically your reaction to going through something when you're feeling dysregulated. Learning how to regulate your energy, learning how to move through things even when you're not totally regulated as well. And ultimately, I'm seeing Six of Wands here, which shows that you're going to pull through with this. You're going to get a very good outcome too. Ending with Six of Wands. Six of Wands is a card of success. It's a card of victory. It's a card of transcendence. And so it shows that you are very much going to accomplish this. And so that's that. That's what's going to happen. End of the story. Trying to see if there's anything else important, because I feel like that was a lot. Working with yourself mentally, stressful, doable. Some of you, this is going to be a breakthrough moment within your career. It can be a breakthrough moment, or it can be clarity that you get having to do with your career. It can have to do with your purpose. It can have to do with a role that you're playing, something that you're meant to be doing, that I'm seeing a lot of fear be around, that could potentially try to take you backwards. It feels like, I know that I'm supposed to be doing this, but then you have your shadow coming through and being like, telling you again this whole sit on the bench thing rather than going in there. It's like, I know I'm supposed to be in that game right now, and your shadow coming through in whatever form it is and trying to sort of dissuade you. If you show up, you are going to see that things really do work out and that you're going to be successful. Coming back to this energy of the Queen of Wands, the energy of the Queen of Wands, if we just read it on a surface level, you can imagine somebody sort of like going center stage and being so confident and blowing it out of the water, and they know what they're doing and they're not even nervous at all. And it's not like that. The Queen of Wands is about showing up even when there's a challenge. It's about being true to yourself, and it's also about vulnerability. Because I think we can look at the Queen of Cups and feel like that's a very vulnerable card. With the Queen of Wands, it takes vulnerability because there's honest self-expression. So it's ultimately about owning your energy, regardless of what it is, and still doing what needs to be done, you know, still answering the call. And that you'll find that if you show up and you're being true to yourself, you know, like showing up in a way that is authentic, and you are expressing yourself in your truth, that's really all that's required of you here. It's just for you to do your thing. And this means you don't need to be faking anything. You just show up exactly as you are. And you'll find that this is very successful. Ambiguity, different emotions that you're working through. You're going to show up and you're going to do the thing. It feels like your main job right now is to make sure that you stay aligned with truth and stay sort of on that vibration, even while you're going through something that feels like your shadow coming up, motivated by fear, trying to sort of get you not to do something because it's scary, because it's intimidating, because of, you know, X, Y, Z. Having to work through that and still push forward. When like shadow, it would be so much easier to succumb to the shadow. Shadow's like trying to walk you backwards, but Nine of Wands, and it can be easier to go that way if we are sort of ducking out of this. Simultaneously, the way that you are being encouraged to move through this is forward. Shadow wants to bring you backwards, but this is you having to like fight your way forward. And taking action and doing your thing, you will find this very much works. I feel too like this is you getting information about sort of the like, I don't know what you want to call it, the energetic obstacle course that you're going through currently, the cycle that you're working within currently, the karmic test that you're going through, whatever you want to label it as. It's like the challenge currently that you're moving through. That's what's going on with this. So that's like a breakdown essentially of what's happening within this. If you show up, you will find that this ends up being successful. That's like the point of the story, I feel like. Or just what you need to know. Like, this is going to work very, very well, and it's being encouraged for you. All right, my friends, we are going to leave the reading here. I would like to thank everyone for connecting. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sending everybody love, and I hope to catch you guys next time.